consumer data, India has approximately 440 million gamers, 100 million Edtech, and 20 million crypto users. These categories are fast growing, but interestingly, they are recording a very strong response from the Bharat region. Audiences are investing in digital currencies and ready to subscribe to EdTech courses and gaming products. Today, brands across these products are predicting a sizable revenue generation from the Bharat region. Gaming, EdTech, crypto, entertainment together have been making a massive contributions in creating the Bharat Metaverse. Upcoming next is a panel discussion on creating the Bharat Metaverse from gaming to currency to entertainment. I would like to invite Devesh Gupta, Lead Brand Solutions, ETBrandEquity, to lead the discussion. Now, I would like to welcome our panelists, Ramalingam Subramanian, Head of Brand, Marketing and Communications, CoinDCX, Aakash Chaudhry, MD and co-promoter, Aakash Educational Services Limited, AESL, Saumya Singh Rathore, co-founder, WinZO, Akshay Mathur, Chief Revenue Officer, Tyroo. Welcome, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the next session of the day, creating the Bharat Metaverse, from gaming to currency to entertainment. The digital medium is fast penetrating into the Bharat region, and consumers here are subscribing to new products for education, investments, gaming, and many other needs. A few years ago, nobody would have thought that these categories could exist in the Bharat market. But the reality is they are, and they are fast growing and recording a very strong response from the Bharat region. As per the data, India has approximately 440 million gamers, 100 million EdTech users, and 20 million crypto users. And a sizable number of consumers for these categories hail from Bharat region. These consumers, the Bharat consumers, are no longer shying away from investing into digital currencies, studying and learning online, and entertaining themselves with gaming products. So what does this reflect? It reflects their aspiration to experience new products, their propensity to pay for these products, and a growing market for these products with a strong future potential. As we go along, players across these categories and many such more are predicting a sizable revenue generation in coming years from the Bharat market. More importantly, they are making strong contributions in creating the Bharat Metaverse. So today, I'm here with industry leaders from gaming, crypto, and EdTech sector to discuss the overall potential of the Bharat market for these products. Let me introduce to my guest for the day. My first guest for the day is Mr. Ramalingam Subramanian, Head and Brand Marketing, CoinDCX. Welcome, Ram.
Hi, Devesh. Thank you for having me.
My second guest for the day is Mr. Aakash Chaudhry, MD and co-promoter, Aakash Educational Services Limited. Welcome, Aakash.
Thank you, Devesh. Pleasure to be here.
My next guest for the day is Ms. Saumya Singh Rathore, co-founder of WinZO. Welcome, Saumya.
Thanks, Devesh. Great to join this panel. Thanks.
Great. And my final guest for the day is Mr. Akshay Mathur, Chief Revenue Officer, Tyroo. Welcome to the panel, Akshay.
Hi, Devesh. Good to be here.
Great. So, first things first. I'll begin with Ram. How do you define Bharat market? And, what role do you think, digital is playing in the growth of this market?
Interesting. Thank you for that question. Bharat and India, in a way, I can look at it as a form of segmentation that we're doing. Right? And one way of segmentation is via the channels through which we reach out to them. Right. Being a digital-only product and with considerable restrictions on possible channels for marketing, we had to improvise a lot to reach out to even India, right? The India part that we're talking about. So specifically what we looked at, right? And we looked at influencers in these areas to help us bridge that gap from a marketing perspective. And being a digital product, it was prudent for us to target the digitally native folks, right? Even in Bharat. The total addressable market is huge, but and that basically brings the digitally native folks in Bharat also to a sizable number, right? And the product being a financial asset, being completely new, requiring high education, we felt tapping into smaller influencers who have high engagement and are native speakers make a lot more sense, right? So we did use the larger influencers for branding, but tactically we use smaller vernacular influencers to pinpoint and target this segment. The discussion that I'm leading out to, right, is this is the strategy and this is the market, right, which is heavily dominated with native cultures, native ideology, and that's the focus area when I want to define the place called Bharat as a market. Okay. And definitely for us, beyond the traditional and digital mix, this specific strategy where we were able to also reach out to communities through influencers, I felt was the right way for seeing growth in this space.
Okay. When it comes to the gaming category, Saumya, how do you define Bharat market in your boardrooms, and how is digital playing a key role there?
Yeah, very important question actually. And every time we define our audience, we always use the word Bharat, right? And there's a specific reason, right? Like you can see India is one of the most populous countries and it's extremely diverse. So your language, dialect, food, everything would change every 100 kilometers in India, right? Our market is majorly coming from tier 2 to tier 5 cities in India. This is the audience that has come on digital grid for the first time after the Geo revolution in 2017, right? 2017, which basically means that they never used a laptop, they never used a desktop. They're connecting to the internet grid for the very first time after 1 decade of e-commerce being solved, right? So when we solve for this audience, keeping culture and cultural relevance at the heart of every solution is really the core of the solution in itself, right? That's where your moat would lie. That's where you address the basic needs of the audience that's really connecting to your product. There are 36 unique states and union territories in India, right? We at WinZO, we currently just like a second on WinZO, right? We are 75 million registered user base today. And we are present in 12 languages from the very first 5 months of the company being formed. Because very early on, we realized that the difference in dialect, the difference in preference, language is going to play a very important part in entertainment and gaming, right? Gaming is nothing but an interactive entertainment that users are now using as a boilerplate for all social interactions. We're clocking around 2.5 billion games every single month. And those are people who are connecting to smartphones for the first time. 80% of our audience connecting from tier 2 to tier 5 of India. 20% of those people are making the first ever media and entertainment or digital payment on the internet for the first time. And when we're talking about this audience, building products that are socially and culturally relevant for India, and then scaling it globally, keeping social and cultural relevance is very, very critical. And for us, that is what we define as Bharat, right? Like audience, language, dialect, preferences changing every 100 kilometers, and personalizing at that level when we are delivering experience. For us, we are like in the business of delivering experience. So that's what we define as serving the audience of Bharat.
Absolutely. Aakash, when it comes to the education sector, how do you see, the Bharat market? Are they open to learning digitally? Are they subscribing to the digital products? Because in urban settings, we talk a lot about, that, I'm studying and learning through apps, I'm taking the digital courses. But what's the on-ground scenario when it goes into beyond the urban settings, in the non-urban, in the tier 1, beyond tier 1, tier 2, tier 3?
See, for education, there has been a lot of doubt as far as the efficacy of digital platforms are concerned for a very long time. And Edtech did not just happen after COVID or due to COVID. Edtech has been there. I still remember, 2001 and 2 was the time when companies like eGurukul and all started off, and those were some of the early movers, and obviously they were far ahead of their time. So EdTech has been there for a very long time. The question which most of the students and the parent always had when they would experience our product also, that will I get into, if I talk about my space, will I get into a medical entrance or get through a JEE exam only learning through a computer without any physical interaction with any teacher, without any opportunity to exchange. So I think that is where the challenge has been. But as the COVID happened, the amount of acceleration in terms of acceptance of this platform, EdTech as a platform, has happened not only for India but for the entire Bharat. And to me, anything outside of metro city is pretty much the Bharat. And I think even in metro city, there are pockets of Bharat, which are always existing, and they are fairly traditional, fairly old school as far as their consumer habits are concerned. So as this COVID incident happened, and I think the learning curve was so steep, not only for the students, but also for the trainers and also for the content creators and innovators around the technology, that they really jumped onto the opportunity and created an environment which seamlessly transitioned a lot of kids to this. Having said that, if you go down to the nooks and corners of Bharat, there are still many areas where education hasn't even resumed for last over 18 months now, and they are suffering for it. But I think so that is where the challenge is. Just to throw in a fact that in the access to internet in India still stands about 25%. So 75% people do not have access to internet. And if you talk about getting into a metaverse, one of the primary requirement is to have your own personal device, your personal learning device or activity device or entertainment device. Beyond a television in a drawing room, I think people haven't really gone with personalized devices as of now. So I think there is a long way, but those who could manage to get access to the devices and internet because of COVID, we see a significant amount of acceptance. All the the doubts and all the guards which were up that this is not going to be effective for us, they suddenly found this is working for them. They are seeing results, they are seeing scores, they are passing exams. So I think we have actually solved that problem, that this is not a hogwash. This is not just an information. This could be an interactive learning platform. And I think the path for venturing into something like a metaverse is something that could be a reality in given time.
Absolutely. You touched upon a very interesting subject. That how COVID has given a push, to the acceptance of these products. So Akshay, on that point, I want to come to you and understand, how what are the trends that you have seen? How COVID has given a push to a lot of digital consumption and acceptance to these products in the market, and how are audiences there consuming this content?
Devesh, in my opinion, right, while Bharat market has always existed as a market, right, from say, for example, CPG product perspective, right, the surf and wheels, sabun tel, mass products, right, for them, that has been the market, right, the tier 2, 3 cities. But the definition of that has expanded for, many other brands, right? The main reason for that has been that there were media dark regions in the country, right, that have now started becoming more accessible, due to adoption of digital, right? And there are multiple reasons for that, right? Maybe mobile phone penetration, cheaper internet connections, better speeds, cheaper smartphones. You get a smartphone for 2,000 rupees these days, right? And there is, there's no one way to attribute for this explosion, right? But a collective play that has happened. Some of these were fueled by private players like Reliance Jio, which came up, right, disrupted the market in 2016. Some government, of course, initiatives that have been there, and like you rightly said, a lot in the past 24 months because of COVID. The acceleration has been more. People are at home. Adoption of digital has been much more, right? What has happened, right? Two things have happened because of this. New digital products have started being made specifically to cater for these audiences, right? Case in point being, all your vernacular news aggregators which have come up, UPI, wallets which have come up, real game money games, etc. have come up, short format videos, edutech apps which are all now catering for these audiences, right? And because of which, from an advertising perspective, if you see, right, a second revolution has happened, right, where existing traditional brands are now able to talk to newer prospective consumers from these smaller cities with ease, right? These two things have happened predominantly, right? And if you think about it, before 2016 the digital audience spends were very undivided. It was a very top 8 metro phenomenon, and I clearly remember every digital platform had this queue, right, of user base. It was top 8 metros and then rest was nothing. 2021, all the panelists are there. There is a drastic change, right? And the veil of media of darkness that we call has been lifted. The next 500 million users on digital are youth from these smaller towns, cities, expanding the market for a lot of these products which were earlier a privilege for only the urban consumers. So collectively, in my opinion, this is the Bharat market which has just suddenly opened up.
Okay, that's that's a very interesting point that you have made. How the Bharat market is opening up, and how people are there sampling to the the newer products that the panelists across all these categories are creating. So Ram, I wanted to touch with you first. For the crypto category, and which is now an asset building category, where you invest into building assets. I mean, what are the apprehensions that you have seen from the audiences and from the consumers basically in the Bharat market that were there into investing into the crypto assets?
Largely for us, the apprehensions remain same, right? People don't know what this asset class is all about. People don't know what overall financial literacy in itself is a question that we need to it's a gap that we need to bridge, and then comes the entire question of crypto, blockchain. Is it just FOMO? Is it all glam? Is there a scam around the corner? Right, so all these things are there across the board, especially in Bharat, because see, largely even today, crypto products are all English products, right? English speaking products. The numbers are in English, the charts are all in English. Even if you go online and search, want to understand and learn, you will be thrown with a lot of English content, right? And for Bharat, which I truly believe the nativeness of content, of communication is very important for them for building trust. I think there was a recent survey that showed 60% or so people trust local languages and content in local languages, or these local influencers, which basically means that they are more comfortable in their own setting, right? And that was definitely a challenge that we had to endure. Now, so we are a very young company, right? And we have basically grown whatever we have grown in the last 1.5 to 2 years, right, during the pandemic period. So we for us, pandemic was not a surprise, but the reality, right? We had to grow in the same space. So the only difference, or the only additional bridge that we need to gap is how can we be more native to them? And when I say that, and if I move away from the urban audiences, the market really opens up when only if I just take content. What is the language, right? Who is the influencer, or who is the person that the guy can believe? And that's where we had to actually go very nano, right? We were studying from our analytics, trying to figure out where the excitement is all about. But beyond the urban market, the overall market itself is so fragmented, right? So it's not that I'm getting, say, a good number of users from Lucknow. I can then start building the Lucknow or the Hindi speaking content, or look at channels there. but I can get immediately a response coming in from Hyderabad, right? Or Vijayawada or Ennore or some other place like that, right? The challenge for us was on 2-4. One is first educating you about the asset class in itself, and also doing it from a position of trust, right? Because so that people don't get misled. We have seen growth, but as an organization, we are always very cautious about why are people coming in, right? Are they coming in because there is a lot of FOMO, there is a lot of noise, or are they coming in for the right reasons? And ensuring that perhaps has been a big challenge for us. And doing that at scale, like we have rapidly grown over the last few quarters, and doing this consistently at scale is where I think has been the biggest challenge for us. And addressing that apprehension, right? These two-fold apprehensions, understanding the asset class and also whether they can come in for the right reasons. I think these have been the few things that we had to address.
Interesting. You mentioned a very right point that that all the crypto information is mostly in English. And if I have to think that somebody is in let's say a Vijayawada or an Indore or beyond somewhere in the towns of Satara or maybe down south, they would prefer to read, understand those charts in their language. And it's not that they cannot understand that. They can still understand the charts in their entire language because they anyways do their daily conversations and buying and selling stuff in their own languages. So on this note, Aakash, I wanted to ask you, how are edutech players, realigning their content, and in the native languages, and how much important it is, when it comes to edtech, to realign this content in the native languages to appease to these audiences, to the Bharat consumers.
I think there is a dual push. There is a push from the government. Obviously, for example, if I talk about entrances, NEET is an exam that happens in 11 languages,
right? And
thereby allowing an opportunity for the content creating companies to create content in vernacular languages. For example, for our students, we create content in English, Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, Bengali, Odia. So and also for us, I think one of the litmus tests is how many students are takers of these exams in that language. If those numbers are growing, earlier it used to be predominantly English, and then when Hindi was introduced a long time back, there was a lot of takers for Hindi, and now recently we are seeing Gujarati and Bengalis become very, very strong in terms of medium of instruction and for students to take that. So I think there's a push from the masses, and there's a push from the government, from the regulatory authorities that how they want to shape up the market and give the opportunities. And also there is a push from the the consumer and the sales team interaction, where the buying decision happens, where the exploration happens. For example, recently we concluded our national scholarship test. Earlier we would end up about 500,000 kids writing that, but this year we crossed about almost 1.2 million kids writing that exam, because we went very aggressive on the vernacular messaging, reaching out to the kids all the way in the all 5 south states, and even in the northeastern markets, in the western markets, communicating the advantages, the proposition of the product, of the program, of the exam in their language. I don't think we've reached a point, but I think we did, since the scale is very, very small right now and the vernacular markets are pretty large, but the amount of growth that we saw this year was very, very interesting, and actually giving us confidence that we need to start looking at those markets, and communicating those markets in their own language, in their own content, in their own dialect. And I think this is exactly the challenge which something like a metaverse is very well placed to solve, because when you want to do take any service or take any experience, especially around your career, especially around your education, familiarity breeds a lot of confidence, builds a lot of trust, and builds gives you a very high level of acceptance. And I think environments that will enable, will enable us to provide content in an environment that the student, the teacher, the content creator are comfortable in, and they're able to visualize that environment there in their own language, in their own, sitting in their own homes. I think that'll be a massive win for Bharat, because to provide that infrastructure physically and even through digital mediums today is very, very difficult. But this will be a next step.
Correct. Just, an additional question that I have for you, when you interact with these audiences, with these consumers, okay, so how do they trust you? What are the key factors on which, they are able to develop a trust for your products, for the EdTech products? How does, I just want to understand, that if I have heard something about that, okay, this person or people in my colony, people in my panchayat, or people in my tehsil are using this product, and there is a lot of word of mouth around this product. So how do you create that trust, for your product in that market while you're penetrating?
I may not be the perfect example to comment on that, because we carry a lot of legacy of 30 years and a big track record. So people always had that trust in terms of the quality of product and programs that we will put forward. But when we started aggressively moving on the EdTech side, I think a lot of that word of mouth and that crowd opinion sort of got focused onto the ratings and the reviews of the people that we were able to ask for and gather and showcase it to the potential audiences and prospective students and parents. So I think that matters a lot. And it's a free world, and people are very, very conscious and aware of the ratings and the reviews that are thrown on the company, on the product, on the service, on the experience. And I think that is driving a lot of growth for even for new entrants. You start your company a year back, and if people are talking about it, liking the way you're handling their queries, liking the way you're offering programs, they will feel very, very comfortable. I'm sure people on the panel would have bought something new from a company that never existed 5 months back, just because reading the reviews and ratings, it gives you a lot of confidence. And for us in a physical environment, that could only come by years of repeated track records and all of that. So I think that journey can be accelerated with the help of the reviews and the remarks and testimonials.
Correct. On that note, Akshay, I want to come to you and understand. We're talking about how it's best to create the content. It's best to create either the crypto content or the EdTech content in the native languages, in the vernacular languages. Okay, while you deal with a lot of brands and who are anyways entering into these markets. So what has been your observation when it comes to the preferences of the audiences in that region for vernacular content? Does it work more? Does it help them reach and cut across better?
Yeah, Devesh. So, out of the 800 million internet users, right, that we have, if you see, almost 300 million users are outside of metro and urban, towns, right? And that is rapidly growing as we speak, right? And it's an audience no brand can unsee, right? So, I think there is a report of Sequoia and BCG, which had come out on, for example, in the Indian gaming industry, the gaming industry that we spoke about earlier, right? You mentioned that, it's a 440 million gamers out there, right, generating close to about 1.5 billion US dollars in revenue right now, right? And as per that report, it's going to triple to $5 billion in the next 5 years, right? As per, I think, an MPL report, it was in 2021, India's top 30 tier 3 cities and towns, they witness almost 170% growth, in gamers, Gen Z gamers compared to 2020, right? And some of these towns are gaining more than 200% growth. Like, these are small towns which are, growing at that rapid pace. And Saumya may, collaborate on what I'm saying. And specifically around brands, Tyroo engages with almost 5,000 plus brands, and they're all looking at attention spans of these audiences, these Gen Zs, right? And these brands are always looking for newer platforms to engage with, newer apps, newer games that are there, right? To get just the mind share, of these audiences. So there's definitely interest and inquisitiveness from brands towards these new age digital products and audiences. Yeah.
Interesting. Coming to you, Saumya, I mean, Akshay already made my point. Put my question to you. I mean, what's it? That the Bharat audiences are now, the Bharat consumers are now, ready to spend on gaming. I mean, how do you build that, that trust factor? How do you build that, that hook for these audiences, for these consumers? Yeah.
Sure. Maybe, I'll kind of spend some time on sharing how the landscape actually evolves. So, as we all know, India as a country and as a culture takes some time to warm up to digital adoption. I mean, of course, we are the ones who did Rath Yatra to the parliament to accept desktops, right? We are cautious to change. So during COVID, however, digital adoption took like a quantum leap, right? Consumers moved drastically towards online channels. Behavioral changes that you were expecting in next 5 to 7 years actually happened in last 12 to 18 months, between 2 to 3 waves of COVID. Right. And as a result, banking and payment, the critical pillars of economy, saw serious uptick in adoption. And gaming, in essence, became a boilerplate for most human interactions. Digital versions of simple board games such as Ludo became the most downloaded app, in the country, the highest game that was downloaded ever. And I mean, so you club this surge of payments and the surge of gaming, that is WinZO for you, right? We are a microtransaction enabled, platform. I still remember, 23rd of March, 2020, keep quoting this as an example, the first time of national lockdown. We actually rushed back to our offices because we were anticipating a DDoS attack. Our servers really saw unprecedented surge, and that graph never actually came down. Those were people who were coming onto smartphone, connecting to internet for the first time, craving for human connection, and finally trusting digital payments, right? The country has just started finally opening up to all things tech. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, at WinZO, we, building trust. The most important part of that word trust is being relevant, relatable, and familiar. I think I'm just double clicking on what everybody on this panel said, but I think that's very, very core to the audience that is connecting to the global grid for the first time. That is the recipe for trust, or building, that place where they're comfortable to make their first transaction ever. So we are also following pretty much the same recipe and hoping that it works well for us too.
No, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Ram, taking on from where Saumya left, how are you, creating, tailor-made products? And this has also come, during my discussion with a lot of brand custodians across, the Brand Bharat Summit, when I've been talking to them, that, what the Bharat region requires is that, a tailor-made product strategy. That something that works for urban will not work for the Bharat market. But here it's a slightly different thing. Crypto is working very well for the Bharat market, okay? And gaming is working very well for the Bharat market. Edtech is working really well for the Bharat market. Okay, so between this, I mean, how are you strategizing your product strategy to suit their needs exactly?
Sure, interesting question, Devesh. So I'll just jog our memories back. In 2018, there was a small video created with, I think, HUL and Ogilvy. They put a shower in the middle of a hot desert in Rajasthan, and then basically reached out to all of us and our conscience, saying that this is the amount of water that can feed, that can basically quench the thirst of so many people, right? That was an amazing campaign out there. What has happened in general, and I think Akshay did speak about the consumer products going rural, right? So I think I can relate to, I can't remember the person, but someone from the industry mentioned that largely the strategy was, I either downsize the product, or I downprice the product, or sometimes down value the product and cater to the Bharat even within the city. And because there is a lot of parallel, it did work out, right? And there's not much of an effort put beyond that. See, when it comes to strategies for the market, right? One thing we need to understand what relates to these people. And I think while preparing for this conversation, I had a chance to go through an article written by one Dr. Sandeep Goyal in Business Standard. He mentioned about how Valentine's Day and Akshay Tritiya has performed as pure marketing events. Beyond, say, the 20-25 cities, Valentine's Day is not really that celebrated. However, it was introduced as a marketing event roughly around 30 years back. Akshay Tritiya, on the other hand, was introduced, say, as a marketing event 20 years back, but it was very native to everyone out there. And today, as a event, it is outperforming the Valentine's Day or the Father's Day, Mother's Day, whatever we're trying to create as marketing properties. What it basically says is going specific to their needs, specific to their culture, being part of their ethos, and making a genuine effort will actually help us connect a lot more, right? Being part of their actual life, being part of their beliefs and rituals will help us create or respect, or that command that respect from them, right? Specific to crypto or specific to CoinDCX, we had to make a lot of changes, but because of the size of the company and where we are, we couldn't make a lot of changes on the product per se, but we could do a lot of stuff on the content, right? We even went ahead and launched a sign language course last year, right? So content, communication, I think these are the spaces where we were able to make changes. But we need to also understand one thing, and this is something that I've realized, the way in which people are interacting with the product, with at least on the strategies that they're applying, the investments that they are making. Okay, I understand a large portion of them are still testing the waters, but I can still see the strategies. I can still see the investment patterns very much similar to the so-called India market, right? And there's a good connect out there. So there is a lot of understanding, there is a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of skill out there. We just need to find out a way to help them channelize it better. And probably that's your product or content strategy. And if you're able to give them that opportunity to express themselves, I think the market is out there for everyone to tap into.
Before you have to, leave from me, I understand there's something urgent at your end. I would like to, take the same question to you also, Saumya. I mean, how are you tailoring your product and content strategy, according to the needs of the Bharat consumers?
Totally. That's a debate that we always have between me and my co-founder Pavan on how the product should be, that we are able to optimize for the higher ARPU that tier 1 audience has to offer, and yet stay, relatable, relevant as a product for tier 2 to tier 5, where the need is absolutely different, right? And we keep, debating that you cannot have a product that is liked and utilized by tier 1 and still, continue to have that cater to tier 2 and to tier 5 audience of Bharat, because, the ball game is completely different, right? And we do play a very strong game of personalization, of language distribution through the long tail, being present in the community so that, there's a higher trust built at threshold itself when they are receiving the product, education through the community itself, having a very strong product led distribution, so that you don't just see it as an ad on Facebook, Google, and other digital platforms, but you're actually hearing about the product from your very best friend, somebody that who is a place of a smaller influence to you, but still very close to your culture. But there is no standard recipe, because we are all solving for this audience for the first time. No, this audience, and I keep saying that this audience is parallel to no other audience in the world. Maybe folks sitting in tier 1 who were consuming a Flipkart back in 2010, 11, 12, 13. We're ones that's very close to some of the folks who were building similar products in the valley. But now this audience is very, very different, and we all still learning how to appeal to them, distribute to them, build trust with them, and most importantly build models which are viable and can actually get this audience to monetize in a stable, scalable manner, and not just offer discount and hope that they'll come consume on the platform and then begin to love us, because we're also talking about extremely price sensitive market, right? So yeah, I don't think that at WinZO we have arrived at the recipe that we can say that ye chalega with Bharat. We're still learning about the consumer, and we still odd every single day at how counterintuitive some of our hypotheses could be. So that's from my side on this.
Absolutely. And I think all of us are trying to figure that out. Kya chalega, what works with the Bharat market, and so that everyone can get a further penetrate and get a higher share in their respective categories. On that note, Aakash, I want to come to you and understand that like Ram mentioned one point that previously it used to be a concept that if your product is if your urban product is working, then you kind of downsize it, reduce the cost, and take it to the in the Bharat market, in beyond tier 2, tier 3. Like, does that concept still work in these regions? What has been your observation?
Absolutely. Obviously, when you start a product, you have to localize the product, and you can't ignore the market forces that exist, in terms of what is accepted. For example, just to give you an example, our same program taught by similar teachers in terms of their talent and pedigree and experience could range from 1 lakh rupee, 50,000 to all the way up to 5 lakh rupee, depending on what market they're being offered at. So I think localization is not only for the content, but also to understand what are the market forces that are existing, and what is the acceptance of your product in what shape and form. It does happen that some markets, for example, accept the same program on a daily basis, and some markets accept the similar program on a weekend basis, and some markets accept that program that will come after a school exam and just wrap it up in a 60-day fast track program. So I think localization in terms of sizing, in terms of value, in terms of pricing, in terms of localizing that product, the same product, definitely, and this is something that any company which has its ear right to the ground with the consumer can understand and appreciate and create their SKUs and product line accordingly. And this is what we have experienced in the last 30 years.
Akshay, I want to talk to you about completely different dimension. And this is about that are brands able to harness the data that is coming from the Bharat region, and are using that to create the products, or maybe the content, or using it to channelize to the needs of the Bharat consumers? Are they able to make use of that tons of data?
Yeah, they are actually. There is, like I previously mentioned, Devesh, we work with 5,000 brands, and they're always looking at, how do they utilize this data, these audiences, reach out to these audiences, at best. Just to put some, macro stats out there, right, which typically most of these marketers, brands do go through. These are very macro stats, right? A population of 1.48 billion Indians, right? Almost, like I mentioned, 850 million are internet users right now, right? Which is almost a 61% penetration of total population. 750 million smartphone users in India as per TRAI. And on an average, if you see a user is using they interacting for 5 hours every day on a mobile app, right, on different mobile apps. That's a strong stat to see, right? Third is, which you mentioned, 440 million gamers in the gaming ecosystem. Just adding on to that, there were 4.8 billion game downloads that happened in just first half of 2021, right? That is almost 1 in 5 games getting downloaded, or installed globally. And fourth is the average data consumed by an Indian in 2021 has been about roughly about 15 GB per month, right? These are, stats that clearly show pattern of how consumption is moving towards entertainment, gaming, streaming of content, etc. And marketers are looking at that, right? Of course, newer technologies which we were talking about, like mixed reality, augmented reality, NFT games, which are these buzzwords, which are going to bring newer forms of behavior and consumption patterns in probably next 5, 6 to 7 years time frame, right? I think Saumya was mentioning how games are now being played in the metaverse, right? Using your avatars, brands will be able to provide branded not content, like branded clothes, accessories, products for these avatars, that can be purchased using crypto wallets, which Ram powers, right? Companies like or games like Fortnite or Roblox, Minecraft, they already started creating these infrastructures for games, right? For gamers to create games within the metaverse or play within these environments. This is the future, right? This is what brands will have to now start looking at. They, if not now, but in the next few years, they'll have to start thinking those strategies. They'll have to start trying out, these environments and platforms. Just a quick thing which I was reading a few days back is there's a couple in a small town in Tamil Nadu, I know if you've heard this, who's having their wedding on Metaverse, right? In Tamil Nadu, in India, in a small town, right? And the guests and the couples will have their avatars. The guests can, give gifts via cryptocurrency. And, it may sound very absurd now, but, trends, behaviors, patterns are changing, and brands need to start realigning, rethinking of how do they fit in the future, right?
We are coming quite close to the session. So before I wrap up, Ram, I'll begin with you. 2 parts. What has been some of the learnings that you have acquired while researching and working with the Bharat consumers, and how do you see the evolution of this market, in respect to your category in the coming years?
Going very specific and very deep into these markets, being part of their culture, right? We have all studied this part of marketing, that we need to understand your market, do the proper segmentation, think about positioning. But actually, when you go about doing it in the Bharat audience, there's so much more to be done. I still remember my first CMO from Cipla. He used to tell me this, right? India is a huge country. If you don't travel in India, you cannot be a good marketeer, right? Today, it is in a way digitally possible. Perhaps, as many of us have pointed out, Metaverse may make it even a different thought process. But the biggest learning overall is, right, the ability and the maturity that the market possesses. It's phenomenal. We need to just empower them. We need to give them the right tools and the right infrastructure, and I'm pretty sure they'll lap it up. Okay. At CoinDCX, we're still trading cautiously. Like, we're still trying to understand how to go about it. But I'm sure if we are able to create the or make the right moves, there is a huge opportunity out there. Overall, I do feel that there is going to be a strong evolution coming in the coming decade. The Bharat marketplace per se, from a concept wise, it makes a lot of sense. On the execution perspective, I still feel the market is too huge to be even put under an umbrella called Bharat. There's too much that needs to be done even there. And if we are able to take care of the diversity out there, I feel if the execution by marketeers is done well, there's a huge opportunity out there.
Awesome. Aakash, your thoughts. I mean, some of the learnings that you have, acquired from working with the Bharat consumers, and how do you see, in respect to your category, the future of the products in the Bharat market?
For us, we also take, currently, we're about 280 locations in India, teaching more than 2.5 lakh students annually. And we've been able to access a lot of these deep markets. And what we learned from that they are as smart as, they can get as savvy as any of the consumer or user outside of these markets. But we've also realized that, these are the guys, working or doing business in these markets also is a very big responsibility, because 70% of this country is Bharat. And if this thing goes wrong, I think, this would be an injustice to this country. So while this does pose a lot of, a big opportunity for anyone who's thinking at this market or looking at this market aggressively, it also has to be done in a very right format, because we feel that the amount of association and the belief on the marketing campaigns that the Bharat audience has is very, very innocent, is very gullible. It has to be dealt in a very, very comfortable and a very thought through manner. We can't really throw them with a lot of jargon, and and most of these people do not have access to protect their rights or anything like that if the service don't go right. So I think although it poses a great opportunity, but it poses a lot of a very big challenge in terms of responsibility to do it right. And the good part about this market is, once they accept it, they are the biggest loyalist. They are not the flippers. Unlike mostly metro users who look for a deal, they look for trust. They want to go with that trust for years to come. So that's our experience has been with this market.
Absolutely. Akshay, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think over the past few years, Indian marketplace has seen like a dramatic shift in how consumers have been purchasing, right? And the last 2 years, there's additional changes with the pandemic that brought, right? And that's seen like a tectonic shift in how retail, works, right? And the way brands are reaching out to their consumers. Technology, access to capital, a growing consumer base with, high disposable income, larger than life ambition, that has fueled entrepreneurship and birth like all these new age digital products, right? Actually, if you think of it, a classic example is the direct to consumer, industry, which has suddenly come up, right? It started at a very slow pace, years ago, but it's suddenly poised to be like $100 billion market in 2025. There are almost 600 to 700 plus D2C brands that operate in India across industries, like food and beverages or apparels, beauty, electronics, etc. And serving consumers directly, without a middleman. So I strongly believe that it's going to be a symbiotic evolution cycle, in the coming few decades. higher adoption of internet, like I said, creates higher accessibility of audiences, which create a a newer market, and that fuels like new age digital products, which come up for these markets. So that is going to happen for the next few years or a decade to happen, and there is tremendous opportunity for all these new age digital products coming in.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That was a really great discussion. We touched upon, some really interesting points, like, how to tailor, the marketing strategies for the Bharat consumers, how, you can build trust, and the future, which is there for the Bharat market, especially for players across multiple categories, it's immense. So, thank you very much for joining me today, and I look forward to many such more discussions with you in future. Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you, thank you very much.
Thanks, Devesh.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your perspective and detailed knowledge around the topic. Now let's move ahead. Stay connected to your screens.